Okay, so you've gotten past the idea stage and achieved some early traction, but that's no guarantee of success, is it?
Right.
And you have a
Right.
unique marketing perspective from your time at all of these companies. What would you say are some of the strategies that founders need to employ to sustain early success?
Yeah, there's a very wonderful story, which I think it's worth telling, about Mark Zuckerberg and my time working with him or for him. And he's pretty approachable. Doesn't seem that way, but he is.
Yes.
There was a summer intern, this is about 2015 or so, and the summer intern asked, if a Zuckerberg were a unit of measure, what would it measure? And Mark said, oh, that's a really good question. And the summer intern said, yeah, well, I was at Microsoft last summer, and I asked Steve Ballmer the same question. Steve Ballmer was the CEO at the time. And everyone was like, ooh, in the audience. And it was an all hands, it was a company all hands. And Mark said, well, what did Steve say? And the person said, oh, Steve said innovation. And people kind of laughed a little bit. And Mark kind of said, that's unfair. And then he took a pause, which he's very known for. He took a beat, and he said, willpower.
Willpower.
He said, anytime things got really hard, we just worked harder through them. Knowing deeply about your product, knowing deeply about the consumer, those two things are central. Andy Burnt is another phrase. Andy runs the creative services for Google. He runs their internal ad agency called Creative Lab. And he was talking specifically in this case about product marketing, which has to do with product market fit. And he said, you've got to know the user, know the magic, and connect the two. And the magic is the feature, the function, the insight that unlocks the retention of the consumer and the passion of the consumer, to come back to that word, but and their advocacy. And that's what drives the franchise. And when things get hard, when things get really hard for Facebook, what Mark did was he went back to those principles and dug in and really understood, what is really going on underneath. I'll give you one other example. In 2006, and, literally world history is different as a result, is Facebook newsfeed was introduced in I think it's 2006. And we can talk about politics later if you care to, but this is more about startups. In the first few days, 10% of the user base of Facebook was objecting to newsfeed. And there was a 10% not only objected, they signed a petition, and people were petitioning outside Facebook's tiny little headquarters at the time in Palo Alto, California. But what Chris talked about is the number 2 group within Facebook at the time that formed as newsfeed formed had to do with an organization seeking peace between the FARC and the government of Colombia in Colombia. And he realized that's really what's here, is not the initial reaction to the fact that people don't like change, is that there's something going on here that's quite powerful, and we should understand that. And hence newsfeed stayed and newsfeed grew. But it has to do, again, with know the user, know the magic, connect the two.
I think that's really a powerful story, because so many founders are really focusing on their product or service, but really failing to understand what the customer actually wants in their product or service, and perhaps when they need to make adjustments, and it's interesting, even with that Facebook story of recent happenings with Instagram and trying to pivot to look more like TikTok, and really the reaction from their subscribers.
Yeah, Adam Mosseri, who's the head of Instagram now, the vice president of Instagram, certainly has had a rough couple of weeks. There sometimes gets thrown about, and I've worked in some of these companies with some, Apple doesn't do marketing and Google doesn't do marketing, and you don't need marketing, you just need product. And I got to say that is totally urban legend and totally not true. Because they are studying user behavior all the time in really deep ways. How many milliseconds does it take to load a page? Does the millisecond of the page loading in Google have an impact on the pathing of people using the product or not? As an example, that is a market research, that's a data research effort, which then, oh, by the way, has a set of communications that sit on top of that then run the programs inside and outside the company. And this is true for Apple, it's true for Facebook, it's true for all these companies. That is marketing. It's not marketing in the sense of, I think marketing is advertising. Advertising is a component of marketing, but it's not all of marketing by far. And if anything, software companies, digital companies, technology companies, the ones I've worked in really in the last 25 years, they are doing marketing all the time, very, very, very adjacent to the product or service because it informs what drives retention, which is ultimately what unlocks the franchise value is retention.
The power of data to drive decisions, I don't think founders realize enough how critical it is to gather data all the time.
I think that's one of the most powerful areas of a company. I mean, I very much believe that you can have a very, very small set of employees who can disproportionately impact the franchise value, the shareholder value, the market, the capitalization of a company. One of those areas is data scientists, and finding a data scientist who is not only really good at her skills and really understands how to run an A/B test that is clean. Understanding how to track a cohort over time is vital, and that person needs to be a good communicator. We've all worked with research people who the best part of their job is they don't have to deal with people. It's just such a weird thing. You need someone who's a really good communicator, and they can make a really huge difference in your company. I think I talk to a lot of founders who say, I want a CMO, and I've been a CMO, and I very much say to them, no, you don't. You probably don't want to, at least not right away. They want to go hire a CMO because they start throwing out C titles. You're the CTO and you're the CMO and you're the C, whatever. And it's a mistake. It's really, first of all, it's very hard to fire people with C titles. And the other is find some people who are really good at data, find some people who are really good at communicating that data. It's going to make a huge difference before you hire a CMO.